I'm leaving Fort Bragg. Someone said, hey, on your resume, make sure you say non-smoker. And I'm like, dude, that was from like the 70s, 80s. No one gets it. But
the hobbies line.
if you're getting out of listen, it's okay to get advice from folks. You gotta use the right advice. Welcome to Warrior Money, the show devoted to supporting our brother and sister veterans. I'm Patrick Murphy.
And I'm Dan Coons.
Today, we're tackling one of the biggest steps in the veteran's transition, preparing for and landing that first civilian job. Listen, it can feel overwhelming and it's even intimidating. But the truth is, veterans come on day one equipped with the skills employers want and need. Things like leadership, adaptability, and mission focus. The challenge is translating those skills into civilian terms and navigating a new system. And we're going to share our own experiences, finding that first job, the mistakes that we made so you don't make them, and what we learned along the way. So let's get after it. All right, Dan, 200,000 of our brothers and sisters transition every year from active service, and that's not just active duty, it's active duty, National Guard reserves, transition every year. The stats show, though, that yes, the unemployment rate of veterans is better than it is at civilians, but at one point, about 56% of veterans will be unemployed at some point. 24% of military spouses are unemployed. Again, these are spouses looking for work, 88% of which are women, by the way. What have you learned? What can we do better? How do you see things?
I think for anybody, veteran, new college graduates, high school graduates, whoever's entering the workforce, finding your first job, just finding your first job is always the hardest hurdle to jump over, right? That first job sets the tone for everything else that you're about to do. I know that you had a really wonderful 10-year military career. And when you were transitioning, you came out with a law degree and then you were doing military work and you tried to find your way into civilian practice, even if you were doing federal prosecution in the JAG Corps, right? And I think you even had a hard time transition, if you don't care to share that. So talk a little bit about your transition there. But I think that first job, regardless of whether or not you're just out or if you're a lawyer out or whatever, that's a hard transition.
Yeah, I just did a Substack piece on, I was literally unemployed for months.
I read it and I liked it.
Yeah,
that's why I brought it up.
Part of it is, it's like, and what my advice to veterans are, it's like, no matter where you are in the scale, like, don't just take the first job, right? And that was the advice I got. It's like, listen, go to a big law firm. You want to go into politics, go to a big law firm that will appreciate what you've done in the Army JAG Corps as a federal and a military prosecutor. But do not go to a smaller firm because that's what's going to jam you up. And so that's why I waited till I went to what's called an AmLaw 100 firm. There's 55,000 law firms in America. And that's why I landed at Cozen O'Connor.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I didn't do early in my career, it was because always dumb luck, and it was just a referral network of people that I knew. Hey, Dan's a good guy, or hey, Danny can do this, or whatever. That was kind of the way that I got my first jobs. But now that I'm a little older and I'm seeing this, like I think you start to create wish lists of places that you might want to work. And if you have no idea, that's totally cool because nobody knows anything anyway. So like, let's create a wish list of, hey, if I want to be in this geography, or if my family's here or whatever, like, let's create a wish list of who the employers are in this area.
Yeah.
Do I want to work for a big company? Do I want to work for a small company? Do I want to be in technology, or do I want to be in supply chain or logistics or operations? Like, name the thing you want to be in. And then you can kind of objectively look, like, and 6, 9, 12 months prior to service end, like, where do I want to live? What do I want to do? What are my employers? And if your list is very short on employers that do what you want to do in your region, you can either accept that, or you can say, hey, listen, I may have to move someplace else reasonably close,
right?
But you've got to go where opportunity is. And I think that's also part of this whole, like, make a list of things that you need. Like, what are your requirements? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you not willing to sacrifice? And how do you move forward? And I think really practically, that's the first way that you get a job and you get offers.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is, it's like what I tell folks, plan your work and then work your plan. So that wish list is part of your plan, and you're putting that plan down on paper. It's concrete.
And it can change.
Yeah, and you got to tweak it. And if it's going back home where your home of record was before the military, that's an important qualification. But then certain industries might not be there. So, and especially if they're bigger companies that you potentially want to join. And I think that's where people go wrong, right? They just think it is dumb luck. It's the first job offered. But no, again, think about geography. What's the tax rate in Tennessee versus Pennsylvania versus Florida? What industries are solid in this area? If you have a spouse, where her or him and the kids, want to go, right? Because it is a team effort. And as long as it's a joint decision, I think that's what will help.
We live in Pennsylvania, right? So, and I think Pennsylvania is kind of an interesting example to talk about this, right? So I served in a few different places, but when I was in Pennsylvania, I was in the Pennsylvania National Guard. And I was a platoon leader in Easton, Pennsylvania, up in Allentown. And I also did some work in Reading, and then I did some work in Philadelphia, and then I did some work in Fort Town Gap. I was kind of all over the state. And each of those areas of the state have different pockets of sort of work and employment you can have, right? So like Easton, Pennsylvania has like a whole lot of supply chain logistics because it supports all the warehouses. Bucks County has different, Philadelphia has different, Reading has different. So when we say that you don't necessarily have to go back to where your home of record was, it doesn't mean that you can't go back to within an hour drive or a 2-hour drive. I think we get really linear as it relates to like being up and down the Northeast Extension or the Turnpike a couple hours is fine, but you do have to go where the jobs are specific to the areas that you're looking for. Like I don't think you're coming out of military looking for a big law firm, you're probably going to go to a small town outside of Erie. Like I don't see you doing that. So it's kind of like, where do I go where my skill set fits and where there's actually a platform big enough for me?
Yeah, and I think when you were saying like plan your work and work your plan, industry. Okay, well, who's in that industry? How can you connect with them? You and I are both big fans of Emily Sawalski. We read her book, $100 Million Careers, $100 Million Wealth, and she talks about your network is your net worth, right? And how you could use your phone as a force multiplier. I mean, like if people aren't, trying to connect on LinkedIn, you're wrong. And I tell people, if you're listening to Warrior Money, connect with Dan Coons or Patrick J. Murphy on LinkedIn. You don't have to write a special note. Just connect with, as long as you have a picture, we're connect, because that is basically your resume saying, hey, and don't say, hey, I'd like to go get a job with you, right? Say, do you have 10, 15 minutes? Can you give me a quick Zoom or a quick phone call? Because I want to ask you questions about your certain industry.
Yeah, actually at 8 o'clock tonight, I'm going to be on a podcast with Andrew Garcia from the Arena talking about transitioning service members into sales jobs. And so he reached out to me. We worked together, we actually competed against each other. I don't know if it was competition, but he was at one big tech company. I was at another big tech company. And he's like, hey, man, can you come talk to me about selling? I was like, absolutely. So I'm going to be talking to probably 50 transitioning service members or young, newly transitioned members about what our jobs look like in the military career, right? And just because of that, I've gotten, 15 or 20 LinkedIn requests recently with people that are going to be on this podcast. And I think the answer is like, we've got to start thinking about opportunities. And you're really good at this. I'm trying to be a little bit different about it, but like, you're really good at making yourself available on all your social medias, on your LinkedIn, and you've got content that comes out very often against all your different platforms. I think, and I didn't really always believe this, but I think I believe this now more than I did. Like, you've got to generate content in these areas as well, even if it's just a little bit, even if it's a trickle. And that's for me, the hardest transition from like one part of my life to the next part of my life is actually putting my thoughts out in the world, because that is a hard thing. But I think it's critical as you separate yourself from the noise right now. Like, you've got to talk into the future about what you're good at so that people can talk about it. And I know you're really good at it, but like, talk a little bit about how you think about it and like, what's your advice there?
Yeah, listen, all leaders solve pain points, right? And so, I was a phenomenal lawyer as a military prosecutor. I prosecuted high-level terrorists that need to go to jail for a long time, the rest of their lives. And but translating that was hard, right? And so part of it was, after the first couple of big law firm interviews I had, and they were walking me through, like, I knew when they ended it, like, thank you for your service, I knew I wasn't getting the job, right? It was like, all right. But then I realized, hey, I got to walk them through on their pain points. Every business needs revenue. Every business needs someone who's good at business development. They want you to do your day job. I was a phenomenal lawyer, was a great writer, et cetera. But I also knew, I'm like, hey, and I had to walk them through, there's 2 million veteran-owned businesses. In this region, there's this many, and this is where I'm going to be based out of. And I'm going to go and sell our services, whether it's my services or my colleagues at this firm. And that's why she hired me. It was not just I'm a great lawyer. And that was when I saw some more traction. And it applies, though, I tell people, when you use social media, especially LinkedIn, use it as a force multiplier. It's not just putting your own stuff out there. You got to have this relationship. You got to like other people that you follow, that you respect, like their stuff, share their stuff, because you can't just be about you, right? There is no I in team. It's okay to talk about me because there is a me in team, right? And a me. but you got to have a relationship a two-way and not just one way.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is what we've been talking about. It's like the whole, how do you find your first job? I'm a huge believer, and I've talked about this on the show before, and I know you are, like, your first job is probably going to come from somebody in your immediate network, right? It's like you can put your list together, you can do what you need to do, but you're going to call your network, and somebody in your network is going to be the first person that gets your job, whether it's a neighbor, a former veteran, I don't know, name that what that is. But like, I think one of the things that I'm also learning is that your network expands by those different next level connections. And it might not be that person I connect you to. Like, somebody connects with me, but I'm going to connect you to somebody else that I know. And I think that's kind of like this multiplying effect, or this layers effect. And oftentimes when we come out of military service, we only want to sit in this sort of linearity that we have.
Yeah.
But it's really about pushing outside and like, hey, if you don't know somebody, do you know somebody that might? And getting connected that way. I think it's a really smart way to think about how you grow your network.
Yeah, and you have to have, even
if it's
humility.
not online, yeah.
Right, and have the humility to ask, yes, you are, part of America's varsity team at a defining moment in our country's history, but you have to have enough humility to say, hey, can you help me? I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. And if you're a veteran and you're listening to this, I think one of the most things, that you should take away from it is, one, it's okay to ask for help. Too many of our brothers and sisters, they drown in a sea of goodwill. They're not willing, they're either not willing to ask for help or not willing to understand the resources that are out there. I mean, every year of the 200,000, 84,000, go through, frankly, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Hiring Our Heroes Foundation, right? They have 84 some events every year. They help over 80,000 to 200,000, and they do it for free. They do it for free for employers and veterans. And it's not just like, hey, come, have, interview in front of these corporations. It's like, hey, here's what you should be putting on your LinkedIn. Hey, do you want a professional headshot? That's free. Those are the type of tactical things that people need to add to their plan to have the right strategy.
Yeah, and I think, but I think it also means that, like, and I'm learning my way through this as well. But I think you've got to start earlier and earlier than you even thought you needed to start, right? Like, if you're leaving service and you're within a year and a half, and you're going to use Skillbridge, you're going to use any of these programs, right? Like, we use technology because that's what we're accustomed to using, right? So get your LinkedIn set up, start to put a professional picture on there, a short bio, and give a little bit of your career in there. You don't have to put a lot in there because you may not have a lot to put in there. You might not feel comfortable doing it, but at least get the infrastructure set up so that you at least are searchable when people start to search you that way. And then maybe get a personal email address so you're not using your Army email address for other things, and start to connect that way. And I think these really simple, basic steps are the things that when I was a platoon leader in Pennsylvania, and I was so confused as to why some of my E4s and E5s didn't have jobs. It's because the employers were out there looking for people with their skills. They didn't know that they existed, and vice versa. And I think that's what we need to start to solve for, is like, how do we make sure that people know that they're out there? And then how do we do that? And the only way you can do that is if you leverage job boards, you leverage the systems that people are already in place, and you leverage the systems that the other organizations that are supportive of doing this.
Right, no doubt. Hey, I know we have to go to a break in just a second, but I think one of the things that I get excited about is, to these veterans out there, our brothers and sisters, they need to understand that they have been through the ringer. People want their skill sets. You are in demand. But part of it is it's your job to walk them through of what you have done, translating the skills and the responsibilities that you had, and how that's going to help the new team, the new formation you're going to fall into. And because they understand, as a overview, hey, veterans would be great to join our team because they're going to work hard and show up on time. They're already, they get drug tested, they're good to go. But, I think the other part of it is it's incumbent on the veteran to explain to them how you could add to that team.
I don't even know what a platoon leader is, or a squad leader is, or what weapon or system you were carrying. They have no idea. And that's the owner of those organizations, unless they're a veteran or served in it.
Yeah.
They're going to thank you for your service. They're going to say, hey, really good job. But they're not going to know what it means to actually do an inspection, or what it means to do an inventory, or what it means to be accountable, loading people on a bus or getting people off of a vehicle, right? Like, those are all very applicable skills for an operational environment where you're going to go through.
Right.
But they have literally no idea. And maybe if you're a service member, you don't either. Maybe the honest answer is that we don't know. We don't know what those things are. But
we don't know because part of it we spend 8 weeks of basic training. We spend another months on AIT, et cetera. And then when you're leaving, it's a week of, Soldier for Life TAP. I think part of it's like, just if you're thinking, if I'm saying things like I was a platoon leader or a platoon sergeant, They don't know what that is. So you're saying, hey, I led 40 men and women. I worked for the Army. It's a Fortune 2 size company with 1.3 million folks, $180 billion a year budget. Like, you got to use the terms that they're used to using, because they just think of Rambo when they think about the Army.
even if you use words like regular maintenance schedule, like, right, if you're doing your PMCS of your vehicle, and I was in a budget council meeting for the area that I live in a couple of days ago. And we were talking about vehicle maintenance and vehicle rotations. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's your maintenance plan?
Right.
And they're like, why does this guy know about a maintenance plan? Because you guys are asking for a new vehicle. Like, do you have a maintenance plan in place? How many miles do you have in the first place? How many hours does that car have? What year is it? Like, these are the questions that you, as a service member, especially an armorer, in my little family of world, you're going to know the answer to those questions. It's like, you're going to know the amount of miles.
Right.
You're going to have done a log. You're going to know the issues with the vehicle that you're on very, very well. There is an applicability to that for almost every industry that we come out to, especially the CDL license.
No doubt, no doubt. All right, listen, let's go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about that first job when you're leaving and during that transition, and what you can do about it to make sure you are in the right step. All right, welcome back to Warrior Money. Dan and I are talking about what you need to do for that first job so you get the right job right from the jump. All right, Dan, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about resume. Resume is incredibly important. Resume, curriculum vitae, whatever you want to call it, but it's really resume, right? A decade ago, it's like 2 decades now. I don't feel that old, but I'm leaving Fort Bragg. Someone said, hey, on your resume, make sure you say non-smoker. And I'm like, dude, that was from like the 70s, 80s. No one gets it. But
the hobbies line.
If you're getting out of, listen, it's okay to get advice from folks. You got to use the right advice. Don't take all of it to heart. But how important is the resume and making sure that it's clear and concise?
One of the things that I do anytime anybody reaches out to me, I tell them I don't care about your resume. Like, I really don't care what you did. I don't care where you came from. I just want to hear you talk about yourself. But then I almost always ask for a resume as a follow-up, because what often happens is the way that they talk about themselves is not the way that their resume looks, right? And resumes, as much as I don't love them, or I think that they're kind of an error of the previous way, like they serve a formal purpose in the job process. You generally have to submit a resume to get through an HR system of a company, right? It's one of the required readings, right? You have to do it. And if you interview well or you don't interview well, you really don't want your resume to look differently than what you're going to talk about. So on your resume, you should have a short bio of who you are, any of your relevant experiences, and any of your relevant credentials and education, right? They're just the boxes that you need to check to get through the HR system, right? Because oftentimes at the bigger companies or even the mid-sized companies, there's some sort of like AI tool that's combing resumes that's like, hey, I know you love this person in their interview, especially the screen interview, but their resume does not have anything around program management or operations or logistics or any of those things. So you at least, at the very least, want your resume as a part of the process procedurally to say something relevant to the job that you're going to go to. And if it doesn't, you risk like being shuttered out of that job because the one piece of paper that they're going to look at as like a backup when you leave doesn't reflect what you're looking at it to be.
Right,
so like
right.
that's what a resume is for.
Yeah,
it's really step.
And to our earlier point, translate it to what the language they're looking at.
Totally.
What their AI system is going to be
Yeah,
scanning.
totally.
They will be scanning it. And also the fact, I always loved that Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, they wrote hundreds of letters back and forth to each other. My favorite was John Adams said to Thomas Jefferson once, "I'm sorry, I don't have more time to write a shorter letter." Do not make your resume 8 pages, right?
No.
You gotta keep it short. You can have a longer one. The CV can be longer.
Yeah.
Your resume 2 pages, man.
So we have Kyle Eberly and Wyatt Frazier on here from Sit Reps, and the amount of memes that those two dudes have about dudes that have like 5-page resumes, they're like 22 years old, just makes my heart smile every time I see it. It's like, it's a page, maybe 2 pages if you've served in Congress and you've done other things, but like a page should tell your most recent relevant experience, your credentials, your name, your address, your phone number. And remember, it's just the piece of paper that gets you through the next part of the process.
Yep.
So you can actually talk about the things you've done in real life. Like that's what a resume is for. It should look good. It doesn't need to say everything, but it has to have metrics, right? Like the part of the problem is that military does not necessarily have a revenue model. Like there's not a revenue model. There's not profit and loss. There's no profit and loss sheets, right? Businesses are run by, do you generate top line growth? Can you generate bottom line growth? And you can deliver operational efficiency? Like There are the three things that they care about: revenue growth, profitability, operational efficiency. And then over here, there's going to be risk management, right? They're the three things or four things. So your job as a veteran or as a job seeker is to translate your resume into the three or four things that somebody cares about. Do you deliver revenue? Can you increase operations? Can you increase profitability? And you can do it a risk managed way. Like that's what they're asking for, right? And so that's what we have to try to figure out how to fit your resume and your talk track into. And they're the three or four things that I think we just got to start thinking through. Even a cybersecurity job relates to that risk management bucket. Like cybersecurity is a risk management tool. It's also an operational efficiency tool. That's what it comes down to.
And it goes to the earlier point too. You use that resume, and it can also help you network. You know, you can say, "Hey, can I send you my resume? Can you give me your advice on it?" Right?
Totally.
Because if you ask for advice, you might get a job. If you ask for a job, you'll get advice, right? So you might as well, you know. And when I tell people too, when you network, and we, you know, earlier we talked about your network is your net worth. But when you network, try and do it in person as much as you can.
Yeah.
A face-to-face meeting is better. A coffee is better than, frankly, a Zoom. But a Zoom is better than just a phone call.
Yeah, I was teaching at our old law school alma mater a little while ago, and people were like, "How'd you get your first job?" I was like, "You're never gonna guess." But I used to go to the bar and used to hang out, and I would just pick up casual conversations, and all of a sudden I would network at a bar at whatever bar it was, and like. That just worked for me because I was like watching baseball and I was like kind of figuring it out and just started talking to people. So like, don't be bashful as it relates to like, you don't have to be at a job fair doing resumes to network for an opportunity. Everybody's looking for talent. And if you can find a place where people are humans at, that helps too. Like, and if you wait and serve tables, like people notice talent when they're around them. Like, do you show up? Are you clean? Are you cordial? Like, those are the things that people care about. Like, it doesn't have to happen in a job fair and a veteran. Like, it doesn't have to happen there. It can happen anywhere. You should be open to the opportunity for it to happen.
Let's talk about Skillbridge. Skillbridge is a phenomenal program. Yeah. Walk us through why you think it's such a good program for veterans to look into. Transitioning
for veterans,
troops.
For veterans to look into?
Yeah, veterans, really more importantly, active troops.
I'm going to do that, but I also want you to talk about it from the employer's perspective of why it's a good deal for employers. I think it's a great transition tool because it lets you dip your toe into the water of the civilian workforce before you ever have to leave the military, right? Like, the other comment I'll make is like,
well, hold on real quick. Skillbridge, so people know, it's free chicken. So if you're a soldier or a troop, you can go work in the private sector. You still get paid by the Department of Defense. You can work there 3, even sometimes 6 months, where you're getting a tryout at a company. They may or may not keep you, but you're going to get that experience, and it's called Skillbridge. It's helping you bridge to learn the skills needed for your next mission as a veteran, as an employee veteran.
Yeah, thanks for defining that. But I also think it's great because it gives people the opportunity to get to know who you are in the civilian world. Like, you're going to go out to a happy hour, or you're going to go out to a work conversation, or you're going to go out to do those things that you don't necessarily, and you don't have to be in uniform. So you're going to do things that you're not necessarily used to or accustomed to during your Skillbridge experience. I also think it's cool because there's a selection process that goes through trying to find your Skillbridge opportunity. Like, it's not just, you don't just get given one. You got to go find one that fits a skill set that you're looking for. So at least you get to test the idea of going to find a job somewhere. Like, the hard part is shortening the list to be able to figure out where you're going to go do that. And I think that's really good. Talk to me a little about the employers.
For the employers, I listen. A lot of them, there's perceived goodwill for veterans, but it's making sure they know that, like, hey, we have a company. We'd love to give you a tryout through the Skillbridge program. You have to file either through the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to Hire Heroes or elsewhere to be a certified, because they want to make sure you're not going to some ragtag place, that it's legit. Okay, and then as employers, like, wow, I can get a sergeant first class to come join my team, or a captain to join my team. Go into our ranks, give them a job to do, and see how they perform, especially if it matches their skill set. It's a phenomenal win-win for folks.
You've been with Hiring Our Heroes for quite a while now. I think you're an ambassador to Hiring Our Heroes. Talk to us a little bit about that organization and what has it meant to you, and like what do you do with them?
Well, listen, I've transitioned from the government 3 times: as a captain from the 82nd Airborne Division, as a U.S. Congressman, and then as the Undersecretary of the Army. So for me, it was, I got pretty good at it, but I saw with my own eyes, man, the government, the Army and the Department of Defense was spending over $1 billion a year on paying unemployment benefits, right? Yeah. It's really Department of Defense. It's really Department of Labor and VA that gets veterans jobs. It's not the DOD. We're fighting the wars.
Yeah, it's just
But
different.
we pay the bill if they don't get
Oh, interesting.
veterans. So, the unemployment rate for veterans, post-9/11 veterans specifically, was about 16%. So that's why we co-authored the post-9/11 GI Bill, et cetera. But what we did, when I went back in the Pentagon, we quadrupled our what's called career summits. Here, it's a day or 2-day event where if I'm a troop, and you don't have to necessarily even be transitioning, you just want to learn about it. You want to get to the left of boom. You want to say, hey, everyone's going to transition at some point. So whether it's in 6 months or a year, or whether it's going to be another 5 years, go look and see what's out there. They're not saying there, leave, leave, leave. They're just saying, hey, these are the options. Okay, this is the industries that they're being offered. These are the areas, geographically, parts of the country you might want to go to or not go to. And it's just a good, it's just a good exercise for not just your troop, but also your family member, spouse, especially if they're looking for work.
Yeah, that's really great. Why do you care so much about, like, why is the transitioning service member just for you? Why does that matter? Why does that call to you so much?
Well, a couple things. One, when I was in Iraq, we had lost 19 men in my brigade. But my 7 team that I led, 7 paratrooper team, one of the guys had a hard time. He got out of the military. I think there's some drug, some alcohol use, more alcohol. And I offered him, a job when I was then in Congress, and told him he could sleep on our couch and stuff like that. And, he didn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And, even though I would text him and stuff like that, and he was back in Oklahoma, it breaks my heart that I could have done more, right? I was always responsive and stuff like that, and I offered. But to me, when you know these folks and they drowned in a sea of goodwill because they don't know those first steps, that's why, doing shows here on like Warrior Money about, hey man, just like plan your work and work your plan. Just get a resume. Look at what Skillbridge is. Get on LinkedIn. Use the vernacular, the language that corporate America's use, and don't use acronyms and mnemonics.
Yeah.
Walk them through what a platoon is, what a company is. They just don't know, and it's not they don't care. It's just they haven't lived what you've lived through. So I just think that's incredibly important. That make sure you're getting that right first job. And again, if you do it and you don't like it, you can always leave, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to be in that role where you're getting a new job every 6 months, because that's a bad look.
Yeah.
And you want to show that you have loyalty to the team that hires you.
Yeah, totally. I've been thinking about it a lot too. It's like some of my very earliest memories were watching my parents struggle to find meaningful work when I was a kid, right? And I think that what your story and my story, our kind of origin stories, are about, like, we see what happens when you don't have good work, like a good dignified work. Like, when that transition doesn't happen, it doesn't take very long for you to not be in a good place, right? And I think that's why I care so much about transitioning service members. It's why I care so much about finding a meaningful job, because I think it's really the foundation for a lot of your wellness, whether it's your physical wellness, your mental wellness, your spiritual wellness, clearly your financial wellness.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we need to really shine the light on that. Like, it's about a job. And once you get your first job, because you've done the right things, as you've said, then your next job becomes a little bit easier because you've got a network and you've got a reputation.
Right.
But it just takes a little while, and you gotta navigate your way through that.
Yeah. And there's dignity in work, about self-sufficiency. And as the great President Ronald Reagan once said, the best social program
is a job.
Is a job, right? So, all right, listen, that's going to wrap up the show. Dan, great job as always.
Yeah, you too.
Subscribe, review, Warrior Money, wherever you get your podcasts or finance on Yahoo Finance. I'm Patrick Murphy.
And I'm Dan Coons. We'll see you again next week.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.